And we are what one would call about as live as a turkey on a Sunday. Well, everybody again. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, and that's it. Yep, that's how we're starting this today. I'm not looking forward to this in any way, shape, or form.
No, this week is legitimately a TED Talk.
This week will be something, that is for damn sure. Let me change my volume because I think I am a bit loud.
We're just here to egg him on.
But yeah, as always, welcome to the famous podcast that everyone loves and knows called Mulligan Opinions. I'm your favorable environmentalist host / environmental science / homeless person. And brought to you by I Can't Speak English is my co-hosts, a famous Godzilla drinking a can of Dr. Pepper, and a man at a computer that's a skeleton. How are you today?
You're an environmentalist?
I am Xander 101, and I'm doing great.
I am Flying Giraffe, and I'm doing pretty well.
You forgot the 42. You're not the real Flying Giraffe.
Sorry, BDSM Simulator, name change back in July.
I'm glad to hear you guys are doing well. Any news the past 2 weeks from you guys? Anything interesting happened before we get into the giant topics?
Microsoft needs to stop updating Windows 11 because every time they do it, they break shit. That's about it.
Which is hard to believe considering how much they've already broke.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a good point. I'm more than shocked that every time they how do they fuck up so badly that it breaks something like that every single time?
No care, no passion.
True. Okay, cool.
I mean, there's probably passion, but not for the shit that they're updating.
Probably not.
Yep.
No. I mean, who would care about Windows 11? Am I right? Am I right?
I
So,
know.
I mean, we can get to one of the most important topics right out of the gate.
Yeah,
we
Xander,
can
why
put
haven't you
up-
opened the stream up?
I do have it open.
How
eat my
dare
ass.
it lie to me?
We can put up a spoiler alert now. What happened in One Piece this week? Let's go over it.
It's getting good, is what it's getting good.
Is it? Do tell. What do you mean? It's
The
getting
anime
good?
is
What do I
getting
know?
real
No.
good. I don't know about the manga, but
You want manga, Xander?
Well, keep me up to date. Where we at?
There's a villain from.
We were being chased right across the ocean to a new
There's
island.
a villain named Rob Lucci.
ooh, I haven't heard
What-
that name in a while.
That's a
What
good
arc is
rock
he
name.
from?
I
Right before Ennis Lobby? No, or right before Water. I think it's right before.
think it's
Water
right before 7. Yeah, not that I know.
He was the first villain that actually caused Luffy a little bit of trouble. He has the leopard fruit, but basically he's from like the government's. There are secret organizations called Cypherpol. He's from CP9, and now come to find out he's a part of CP0 and awaken his devil fruit and is on Egghead and he fights Luffy. This is a couple chapters ago. Luffy beats the shit out of him almost immediately. There's a giant power difference, right? Well, these half of the not half, it might be all of the current seraphim, which are like genetically altered, I guess the equivalent of like robots, but they use other pirates' memories for like genetic factor or some shit. And the one that after Luffy beat the shit out of Lucci, him and Zoro's old enemy from CP9, Kaku, which he has the giraffe.
It's a
fucking
giraffe
outfit,
looking
I'm not even
motherfucker.
joking.
Yeah.
They were basically the equivalent of being tied up is the best way I could put it. And so they needed to be freed. So they convinced Luffy and Zoro to free them. So Luffy and Rob Lucci are now fighting. I think it's called Seraphim Shark, which uses a member of Luffy's crew's genetic factor, Jinbei, who's a fishman. But they gave that one the devil fruit power to the swim fruit, so it can swim through not only water because he's a fishman, but also through land. And then Aku and Zoro are fighting the Mihawk Seraphim, so the world's greatest swordsman Seraphim. And then they gave that Seraphim the devil fruit of I think it was Mr. One from Alabasta, the guy who can turn his body parts into swords.
Really?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
So they gave the Seraphim of for Mihawk just the ability to turn any appendage into a sword. And that is the Seraphim of the world's greatest swordsman, so he's a little busted. So they're tag teaming him right now, and that is currently what's happening.
Okay then. Things are getting good.
Yep. Oh, and then Shanks makes it to Elbaf and is on the island with the giants, and then Kid just docked. Giant. Captain Kid just docked on the island.
Oh.
So there's going to be probably a fight with them.
How dangerous is Captain Kidd? Scale 1 to 10.
Him, Law, and Luffy all have $3 billion bounties. So,
have we seen Kid in action? Like serious action?
Oh,
yeah, Kid and Law took down Big Mom.
I thought that was Luffy.
No, Luffy never took down Big Mom. He just basically hit and ran.
He just simply got his ass kicked.
Yeah.
And then some
Luffy by himself takes down Kaido, who is revered as the world's strongest beast. Big Mom is on par with Kaido, probably a little weaker actually, because she's not really revered as the world's strongest. And it took Law and Kid both fighting Big Mom to take down Big Mom. It took a lot of motherfuckers, and then eventually into a 1v1 for Luffy to beat Kaido. So
how many times did Luffy die?
3.
Yeah.
Oh, die?
Well, I should say
twice.
lose, I should say.
3.
I mean, yeah. So. Kaido was definitely a war of attrition, I feel like, more than anything else.
Yeah, he was.
That's just my take.
And how far behind is the anime at this point then?
Oh, pretty far.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That far? Like, is it that far?
We still have months before we get Gear 5.
Oh my god.
God damn it.
That's a travesty.
That is. That's really.
We're getting close to these right now in the anime. The Sanji awakening's happening, which is pretty fucking cool. Basically, Sanji's from a family. There's a renowned scientist called Judge, and he genetically engineered his children. And Sanji was the quote failed experiment. Well, in the middle of this fight against Queen, Queen bitch slaps Sanji into the ground with his tail because his devil fruit is like some big long neck dinosaur thing that he has then turned himself into a cyborg with. So he bitch slaps Sanji into the ground, and Sanji gets up from the ground and goes, I think I cracked a rib. Stands up, goes, well, no, maybe it's my back, cracks his back, and he goes, maybe it's my neck, cracks his neck, because all of his family line's called Germa. All of his Germa genetics awaken mid-fight, so he just becomes super fucking durable all the time and hits a lot harder, because that's how his genetics were supposed to be, so he's just a really late bloomer.
Really late? Yeah, mid-20s, just going through puberty.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, Sanji gets hit like 3 big times that should have like knocked him out of the fight, and he just stands up like everything's fine. And he, right now he's like, "What the fuck is happening to my body?"
Well, he doesn't know. It's probably cancer.
Yeah.
Probably cancer.
But that's the world of One Piece.
One Piece is going well. Can't wait to hear more. Needs a little bit more time to pass. Get some things to happen.
It's getting good though. It's definitely getting good.
Oh yeah,
Always been good.
True.
We've been saying
true.
it's getting good for years.
That is true.
I've done my segment.
I would say, in other news, let me just talk about my pieces. I'll probably get into streaming it. I know I said that the last time we did this. But things are calming down a little bit. Well, I should say calming down, but the fact I fucking found water damage by my toilet tells me, ooh-wee, but I can't do much about that at this present moment in time. I probably could. I could easily probably replace the toilet myself, but it's an old toilet, it's an old bathroom. I might just try to remodel it, but we'll see. Besides that, I don't know what games I will stream. Xander's been trying to get me into play some Death Stranding, which has been pretty fun, so I might start streaming that with him. Probably starting tomorrow or something. Final Fantasy. Me and Alex are finally on endgame content, so I might stream that. That might be fun to do. So we'll see about that one. Besides that, Ready or Not had not another update, but had a newsletter. It said nothing. So we still don't know what those shadow patches were. Let's see.
Really?
Yeah. They have a weekly update, I think, or bi-weekly. I don't fucking know.
Oh, you mean the thing that came out today?
Yeah. Yeah. Other news, Atomic Heart came out. I know this is Xander's little segment, but I figured I'd come by. Right now, Civilization 6, $5. Oh, wait a minute. Disco Elysium might be on sale. Hold up now. I gotta do some work here.
Dun, dun, dun.
Nope, still $40. Okay, never mind. Yeah, so there's a couple of things going on in that news. There's a couple sales happening. So that's kind of neat. Anything in the world of television, Xander? Because anime-wise, we're still in the middle of the season, so there's not much of a change.
Well, in the world of television, Kevin Costner might single-handedly bring down the TV show Yellowstone.
Oh?
So that's some pretty big news. However, they might just kind of what they might do is just end the show, say screw Kevin, and start a new show, and they want to get Matthew McConaughey. That will be interesting. We shall see. Aside from that, Ghost has been approved for its season 3, And The Last of Us is kicking off very hard. Between the three, they are probably the three biggest live-action TV shows currently running. As far as anime goes into my real-world TV shows, Chainsaw Man appears to be so big, it keeps appearing on my TV guide. So I don't know what Chainsaw Man is, but I know it's an anime, and I know it's so goddamn big that
You would enjoy it.
Even TV people need to know about it. Aside from that, that's really about it. Shows are kind of slowly coming to the end of their seasons right now, and we will be transitioning into the next lineups. However, right now we haven't seen many announcements for a lot of shows that we would have liked to have seen. We have seen some delays, but overall, remains to be seen. So far, most shows are in good spots, aside from Yellowstone.
Okay. That's good. That's weird that the anime and TV show season is lining up that good, considering we're towards the end of ourselves. We're probably about a month out.
Ooh. About the same.
From the end of the season. That'll be interesting. That will be interesting. Well, do we just want to get into it?
You want to tell us about this this gigantic travesty of
when did this freaking happen again?
Chloride or whatever?
Well, let's get the full story first. Ohio train derailment. Let's look up. What do we got here? We got CNN. We got The Guardian. We got NBC News. We got a bunch of shit. When did this first happen? Fox News, my most favorite website. New York Times. Oh, New York Times has an interesting article on this based on the title alone. When did this happen, though? I'm just trying to get... When did this first happen, you know? Hey, here we go. All right. Well, February 3rd, a train derailment happened in Palestine, Ohio? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, East Palestine, Ohio, on the border of Pennsylvania and Ohio, not far from my living location.
It'll be a fun one to see what cancers you get. Which is funny because when looking up vinyl chloride stuff, because I've never heard of this chemical before, but it makes sense, hence its name. So they had this Ohio Department of Health, right? They had an article about vinyl chloride. I think it, according to the file name, it looks like it was created in 2017, like December 11th, or November 12th. Who fucking knows? But it was last updated on the 7th of February. So that's funny that they just happened to update this, and it just so happens to show up in a Google search, which kind of it sums up what vinyl chloride is for the most part. But this train derailment, maybe I can get that other document while I spew in my mouth. Happened, and the biggest issue about this thing would be the chemicals on it. So the train derailed, not entirely, of course, but it was a pretty bad derailment, to be honest with you. It was probably one of the worst ones in a while, and it's caused so much so that, or so much, not panic or distress, but kind of that New York Times is calling it Chernobyl 2.0? ? I haven't heard a clickbait title like that since, I don't know, whenever the fuck I was last on YouTube. So, but what is interesting about this one is their processes for what they did. So obviously, the train derailed and yada 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 yada. Latest updates? No, I want previous updates. Stupid EPA. Give me all of them. Thank you. Yeah. So the 4th talks about. Oh, I could have just gone to this website to begin with. So pretty much immediately the EPA starts air monitoring, water runoff monitoring. They pretty much stated that the train company. What is it? North. Who is this? Who did the derailing? Norfolk Southern Communication and Documentation. That's not the full name, but I think it's just Norfolk Southern. This train company, pretty much what they did was they labeled a lot of train cars, mostly probably tankers, that were hazardous as non-hazardous. They didn't have to have a hazard crew pretty much within, I don't know if it's a day reach, a couple hours reach, whatever. So they didn't have to pay hazard people to be there because, obviously train derailments so uncommon. In case you didn't know, it happens all the time, which is pretty funny. But of course, the that happened. Bigger chemical spill than they were hoping for, because pretty much almost every single, I do believe, vinyl chloride tank they had derailed. So that's fun. Along with the vinyl chloride that decided to derail, we also have... What do we got? We got polyethylene.
I heard there was oil in it.
Drip line glycol. So some glycol, which I think is just... that sounds... And diethylene glycol. Not sure what those two are in particular. Oh, here we go. Combustible liquid. NOS, nithylene glycol, and monobutyl ether. Combustible liquid. And combustible, same thing. Acrylic. Some more alcoholic things. More alcohol. Stabilized. More flammable. Benzene. There's, I think, also, like you mentioned, a couple things of oil. And then, the... I don't think any of these were in the derailment, but there's also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This train was not even covering or holding hazardous materials on it, right? That could be leaking, whatever. It also had 10 boxcars loaded of malt liquors. Can you believe that? And also some paraffin wax, but that's pretty funny.
Yeah, the liquids would help them burn the chemicals faster.
Well, it doesn't look like, at least in their documentation, they didn't state that those were in the derailment, so they didn't burn that. Thank God. Else, who knows what would happen to the, the alcohol.
Alcohol burns clean.
Yeah. Well, I meant more like, if 10 whole box trucks. I mean, Ohio would have been without alcohol. That would have been crazy.
I know all 3 people who actually live in Ohio.
Yeah. So that was interesting. There's also a bunch of different petrol, like lubes, oils, things like that were involved as well. But the biggest concern is that vinyl chloride stuff.
Gotcha.
That was the biggest concern.
Was that what was primarily making up that black plume?
Yeah. So, that's also just because they burned stuff. When they burned that stuff, it burnt everything pretty much. For example, like the polyvinyl, also known as PVC pretty much, was actively burning and was burned. They burnt a lot of shit. So that's why it was black. It's because it was just impurities. It wasn't just oxygen and, a good fuel. But the vinyl chloride, let's go back to the document edited by Ohio and 3 days after the incident. Coincidence? I definitely do not think so. What is vinyl chloride? Well, vinyl chloride, is a gas at room temperature. So it's a gas. Blah, 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 blah. Very cold temperatures, becomes a liquid, but evaporates, changed from liquid to gas, whatever. First and foremost, it's a man-made chemical. Not found in nature in pretty much any way, shape, or form. The only way it's found in quote-unquote nature is if, let's say, some PVC, because it's vinyl chloride is pretty much, it's a gaseous form of PVC pipe, practically. Because PVC this is going to be crazy to you, polyvinyl chloride, which means it's just a bunch of vinyl chlorides chained together. And let me tell you, finding that was a hassle, and then I figured out PVC is just poly-fucking-vinyl chloride. I'm like, oh, now that makes sense. But unlike PVC, vinyl chloride is not stable, and is highly flammable, which is why they burnt it off, because they were concerned that because they were in pressurized tanks, shrapnel could, if it exploded, shrapnel would be seen for over a mile away. Now, of course, the other alternative they did was then they burnt the fucking shit out of it, causing mass-induced panic, to be honest with you, because a giant black cloud in the smoke without, I'm sure, alerting fucking anybody. I think they did a state evacuation when the train first derailed, but I haven't learned too much about that
3
one.
3 days later, they said, "Oh, you can come back. It's okay."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but the waterways are still contaminated. EPA stated that they were trying to do the best to dam it off and stop any more. And by them, I mean the construction crews, the contractors of Norfolk Southern. So they went and they dammed it and did whatever they could to prevent more contaminated water from going downstream. But considering you've seen it all over Reddit, you see a bunch of waterways that are already contaminated to high hell. And so much so that I think 2 days or 3 days ago, I can't remember, I'd have to see. Maybe I see it in my daily updates. Yeah, February 16th, so 4 days ago, the governor stated that the water is safe to drink again, which most people, I don't think, believe him. Which, rightfully so, considering, if I remember quickly, where is my CDC? I got so many tabs open. Did I close the CDC one? I think I did. Let me see if it's in my history. Maybe it was in this EPA one as well. I can't remember. I think I saw, maybe it was the EPA one, that they said it was, oh God, what was it? Which one? I cannot remember. There is a very small amount, like I think it was 0.0002 grams, or maybe even milligrams per 1 liter, and that was considered safe, and that's what they were monitoring, I think. I could be wrong. I kind of wish I remember where I put that document. Maybe it was here.
Losing his documents. Can you believe this guy?
You want to know how many tabs I have open of this stuff? I don't want to fucking talk to you. Yeah, it's a pretty low ppm, which is points per million that you're allowed to drink. I did not look up the, oh, what is it called? I cannot remember the term, or how much of it would kill you if you drank it. I did not look up that. I cannot remember it. I think it's the, God, why am I blanking on this? I had like a week to figure this out, and I completely ignored myself, evidently. Interesting though, but I digress. So pretty much at this point, they're declaring it the issue over. According to their site profile they have, the biggest issue they have right now is the soil, the contaminated soil, which that's probably the biggest issue. Of course, at the same time, I know Xander sent me out a little article of what comedian was it?
I don't, what?
Conan? Was it Conan O'Brien?
Oh, no, that was Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon?
Or was it? No, it was Seth Meyers. Seth Meyers, right?
No, it was the guy who used to do the political show. Yeah, Stephen Colbert.
There you go.
There you go. I was like, whoever does a late night show now, God knows who it is. I didn't know about this, but Norfolk at the beginning of it all stated, they give 25 grand to the town essentially, and there's about 5,000 people there, so it's pretty much $5 per person. And then after this blew up a little bit more, probably because they fucking burnt and a giant black smoke cloud happened, so that gained some traction on the media, I bet. They then gave an $1,000, how did they phrase it? Inconvenience?
Yes.
Check to the residents, which doesn't really get you that far, especially if you're considering.
$5 per person?
Well, no, $5 per person.
I don't know, clone. The stimulus check was supposed to last the whole pandemic, and that was a whopping like 1,600. So,
ooh, true.
By fucking our capitalistic overlords, that's a lot of money that'll last you one rent paycheck. That's one.
True.
That's maybe
True.
a month's rent.
Maybe it depends when you're going.
Yeah.
Considering some places where I live is like
Well, the
$1,600
property
for a
value
studio.
there just decreased, so.
Ooh, greatly. Significantly. Now, hey man, if you weren't looking for some houses to buy that are probably brand spanking new, for the low cost of potential liver cancer, let's go. Which is what vinyl chloride potentially does. But one of the issues of vinyl chloride in particular is because there's a chlorine attached to it, and by achlorine, I mean, let me look at the Wikipedia. You got, achlorine. Yeah, it's 3 hydrogens, 2 carbons, and a chloride. So when you burn it, you pretty much are releasing the chloride in some way, and then it's probably, to be honest with you, I'm not sure what the combustible reaction of it is. I was trying to figure that out.
It boils. I was watching Joe Rogan. He was talking about it, and it boils at 8 degrees Fahrenheit. So it was turning into a gas as soon as it was coming out.
Well, yeah. So that's why they burnt it off. So when they opened up the valve, because it's a gas, it's a vinyl chloride is a gas, is how its stable form is, quote unquote stable, because it's probably highly reactive. But here we go on Wikipedia: the thermal decomposition of dichloroethene, which I don't know why we're talking about dichloroethene. Or chlorothene. Okay, gotcha. So it's 2 of these. So take of 2 of these guys, which is probably what its gases form. I have no clue. But one of the byproducts is hydrogen chloride, also known as hydrochloric acid, in case anybody's familiar. So what's going to happen when you burn it it goes up into the clouds. What do you think is going to come back down? You think rain's going to come back down? No, it's gonna mix, and you're gonna have acid rain. Is essentially what's happening to some degree. So you have some acid rain. You got all these toxic chemicals in the sky that are causing people to smells, feel tingling, sore throat, stuff like that. But a lot of that's not only just the vinyl chloride, but also the other chemicals that were burnt, and overall just the impurity of the train fire. Let's see here on the EPA reports.
If you had a dehumidifier, you could capture some of these.
No,
I'm just curious.
If you had. If I were to hazard a guess, do you know how you have a furnace filter, Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would catch it probably more than a humidifier. A humidifier probably would, because there are filters. There's filters in those things. So if the filter's small enough, you might be able to. But like if you had a HEPA air filter that blocked pollen and stuff like that, you would probably be able to block these chemicals from coming into your house. Besides, through any of the cracks in the house, through any of the opening and closing of the doors and windows. That's the bigger issue here. For the most part, if you stayed inside your house, you'd probably be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, it's been a huge fucking issue. Because like I said, out of they had 1, 2, 3, 4. They had, according to this document they gave the EPA, looks like they had 5 tanks of vinyl chloride, that all it stabilized. So I'm not sure what the stabilize is. If anything, it probably means the dichloroethene. But out of those 15, or out of those 5 rather, car did not leak, blah, 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 blah. So they pretty much determined nothing was leaking, according to this vent product through the PRB and ignited. They didn't leak any. They said, so of the 5, 4 states in this document, car did not leak. One of them didn't say that, so I'll assume it leaked, but they decided to burn all of it. So that's fun. They decided to burn it.
I mean, yeah, when in doubt, burn it out.
Yeah. Oh, I love this one. Combustible liquid, right?
Yeah.
Ethylene glycol, monobutyl ether, whatever. The car status is unknown.
Dude, it's just gone. It vanished. Damn.
I don't fucking know, but it says unknown status. It probably means they didn't look at it. But you got polyvinyl burnt, pinol volley actively burning. So you're having PVC essentially getting burnt as well, which is probably some of the other black smoke if plastic does not burn clean. And so you got a lot of stuff that they decided just to accidentally burn. So, I mean...
Accidentally, though?
I don't know about accidentally or on purpose. I mean, there's a bunch of things that could have happened. But for the most part, right now the EPA has just set it up air monitoring. They're doing indoor air monitoring. They're doing screening levels. They're looking at everything that possibly could be. They're even looking at the soil, because I bet you the train derailment is probably cleaned up enough that they can actually look at the soil now. They're still looking at the water. For the most part, I still think Norfolk Southern is sponsoring bottled water, which is nice of them. And by nice of them,
they'll just burn the bottles when they're done.
Yeah. Maybe we should go into the trash department, right? And just start burning everything like we do anyways.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucking funny. But yeah, so we have, emphasis is being placed on recovery of all pooled liquids, excavation of heavily contaminated soil, removal of all remaining rail cars in order to capture any contamination leaving the site. It's pretty much what they're going to do. So pretty much what they did, it looks like, whatever contractors Norfolk Southern got, or whatever, I'll just say Norfolk Southern at this point, they dammed it up the stream of the affected site, and they diverted it around the contaminant area, quote unquote, but it's hard to determine if you actually properly did that or not due to the groundwater, because at this point the groundwater's fucked. And I believe they're probably taking tests on people's wells as well.
Well, there's also a bunch of small little lakes, rivers, ponds over in that area that are also fucked.
Oh yeah, 100%. And groundwater, like I said, at that point is probably terrible. Which I bet you, considering I've never heard of this town before, it probably is, a lot of it's in well water anyways. But yeah, on the 15th, EPA completed screening of 486 homes. 14 more scheduled on the 16th.
It could have been cheaper for them if they just, I don't know, fucking like invested in like the proper brakes or whatever.
Well, it was overloaded, which is what I was going to get to. What caused the derailment is for days beforehand, the brakes were on fire because whenever they broke, there was too much weight on the train.
Nice.
It's another classic issue, which I'll get into later, of companies trying to cut costs and it finally biting them in the ass enough that it covers mass media. But according to the 16th, let's see. Test results from the village municipal well sampling showed no water quality concerns. And so they stated that it was safe to assume or consume. And then pretty much stated anybody who's drinking water from a private water well schedule an appointment for water testing.
Think they got to pay for the water testing?
Columbiana? What the fuck? How do you pronounce this? What the hell? I'm gonna post it in Discord. What the?
Columbiana.
You think that? Okay, that's what I assume. That's just weird. County General Health District is doing the health sampling. So I don't know if that they pay for it or not. If I were to hazard a guess, probably, but they might be getting away with the fact that Norfolk Southern probably maybe is covering the cost. No clue. Considering I know the ones that the EPA are doing are probably free to the people. And they're probably gonna put it on Norfolk Southern's tab at the end of all this because they already have a. Let me scroll down to their document section. This isn't the page that has a document section. Oh, I can actually select some of these samples. Interesting. Liability notice. They're probably gonna just bill the crap out of these people. But what was I on about? Yeah, so they're pretty much stating it's safe. My only issue with stating it's safe at this point is what? So the 16th is when they determined that it was safe. I would have to figure out. It kind of depends on the watershed, right? But which is funny. This happens after we were talking about watershed delineation on the last podcast, where I talked about how you can tell, what any section of the stream of contamination happened to it. You can tell which watershed's going to be affected and blah 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 blah. Mm-hmm. Which in this case it was a lot. But if you did one of those and you could tell, okay, all these people and that's what they've done and all that are going to be affected. But the bigger issue is how fast does this contaminated groundwater get to the wells? That's the thing. 12 days afterwards, I'd assume that it's probably in the groundwater already and it's probably so diluted that it's probably okay to drink, which is what they're saying. I would still boil it if you're drinking it still. But that's just
for the rest of your fucking life.
Not for the rest of your life, but I mean, I would do probably a yearly thing because my biggest concern is groundwater doesn't move that quickly, right? I mean, thankfully, a lot of the contaminants when it does go through groundwater get filtered out by the soil and stuff. That's the great part of it is the soil itself has natural filtration. That's why, like, at least over here in, I think we're finally starting adding chemicals with Portland, but in Portland, Oregon's water supply was mostly untreated for a long time because we just had to go through charcoal filters and just pretty much the ground. But due to some pesky little mushrooms and fungi, we're going to have to start treating it here soon, if not already. I can't remember if we have or not. It's been a couple of years since I looked at that. But either way, ideally it should be filtered out, so I'd assume it's still safe to drink, but it's going to be really, really hard to trust that water. I would be extremely cautious. I don't like bottled water, but I mean, I'd still drink that for probably a month or so. Just if you can afford it. If not, then just boil it. I mean, boiling it should be just fine as long as you get rid of the.
Boil it, get a Brita.
Yeah, I mean a Brita. I don't know if a Brita would get rid of it, but yeah, so stuff like that. It's just try to filter it the best you can because it really is just going to be nasty stuff. But if the EPA is saying it's safe to drink, it probably means it's below the parts per million you're allowed to drink, which means you're still drinking it most likely, but it's less, so you should be okay.
I'm just curious, like, if you had before it happened, a cup of water, and then after it happened, a cup of water, you think you could taste the difference?
I wonder, considering they say that the gas is slightly sweet, but I wonder what actually got into the ground supply. That's the biggest issue. It's probably terrible.
This is when we find out that PVC chemicals, they taste great. We just got
They test great. We start, this would explain so much. You know why cats eat plastic? I mean, maybe it's just really fucking good,
I think we're onto something.
Your cat eats plastic?
Maybe
LD50, lethal dose 50. That's right. Thank you. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, I don't know what the lethal dose 50 is for vinyl chloride, which is pretty much just it's short form LD50, which is the amount of dose per chemical or material that causes up to 50% of one half of deaths, also known as, like, let's say you had 10 animals, right, and you gave them a dose of 0.5, I don't know, vinyl chloride, right? If 50% of them died, then that's LD50.
Gotcha.
Loose terminology. I don't know what that is. I couldn't find that. But it's interesting. It's extremely interesting chemical
Half
they
of
decided
them died,
to
the
do.
other half wish they did.
Yeah, pretty much. Let's see. What else do we got to do? Here we go. How does vinyl chloride... Oh, I don't care about how does it enter. Once it's in the environment, vinyl chloride is broken down by sunlight in a few days and changed into other chemicals like formaldehyde. Oh, yes. Lovely. I love it when vinyl chloride, another chemical that doesn't exist, it naturally turns into formaldehyde, right? That's safe to drink. Not.
Oh, yeah, super safe, though.
Oh, yeah. It states that it can also evaporate into the air quickly, but, where in this case is, I could also talk about going into the groundwater where it can be broken down over time. That's pretty much the statement from this stupid Ohio published document that they have. I mean, essentially, right, it's pretty bad, and by pretty bad, I mean, it targets the liver, central nervous system, blood, respiratory system, and lymphatic, according to the CDC. I wonder if the CDC has the LD50 here. Nope. Okay. I thought I'd ask. I'm not sure what the REL is. What the fuck is REL? Exposure limits. Well, it says exposure limits. It's 1 ppm, C 5 ppm. I'm not sure what the C is, so it's probably 1 parts per million to 5 parts per million for a 15-minute exposure, and you'll be okay. Is probably what that states, which means all the people you saw on the internet walking around without any hazmat suits, I'd be concerned for. I can't believe they were doing that. I guess it was already being burnt at that point, so it's not vinyl chloride at that point. It's let's look at the chemical equation again, which I can.
Some of these motherfuckers on a hazmat suit.
I meant the people cleaning it, the people burning it, not the civilization. I don't have a hazmat suit. Yeah, it turns into so it removes one hydrogen. And you still have the hydrogen right there. Interesting. Burning it just caused... Well, that's weird. Yeah, so, I mean, it's bad stuff. It's really bad. It's necessary for making PVC pipes, which is extremely stable and I'm sure still toxic. But for the most part, I mean, I'm more just shocked their decision to burn it, which is probably the best decision they could have done, because, I mean, if it exploded, right, then not only would you have pure vinyl chloride or chloride out in the open, which would be a lot worse than what we're currently seeing, but there'd also be there'd be an explosion, right, which would cause even more panic, would cause a bunch of other stuff as well. But I mean, burning it regretfully, despite all the problems it has, was probably the correct choice of action, which I hate saying that, but it probably was. The only reason why I say that is because that way you don't have pure, like I said, vinyl chloride out in the air, so it's not as toxic. It's still going to be toxic, and they should have probably evacuated for a longer period of time. I would have done it until the burning was done, and until the ashes were finished smoldering as well. But it truly is hard to say. I mean, again, regretfully, the people who made that choice was the train company instead of the EPA or anything else like that. So, because I don't know when they started burning it.
The second, like within hours.
Is that what you read?
I'm pretty sure it was within hours. Because I heard about the train derailment.
Yeah, from the fire to the sulfur. Yeah.
And
Yep.
then after like the morning, in the afternoon, it was just like, and it's burning now.
Yep. Okay, here we go. So, butyl acrylate has a low order threshold of, okay, very low in comparison. The screening levels for use on the instant of any. Okay. So pretty much how air monitoring, we can get into that really quick, is you look for VOCs, which is volatile organic compounds. Or is it Varga? I think that's what it is. I believe so. Yeah, volatile organic compounds. Man, I am good. Woo-wee, that's 20 grand degrees, giving me something. Let's see, definitions. Canada has one for any organic compounds that have a boiling point roughly in the range of 50 to 250 degrees Celsius. Emphasis placed on commonly encountered VOCs that would affect air quality. United States, woo-wee, used to control precursors of photochemical smog, blah, 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 include exemptions. Here we go, and state agencies. So, I mean, the United States has some exemptions for VOCs determined not to be reactive or low reactivity. AKA, United States is pretty much stating if it doesn't cause smog, we're good.
Gotcha.
Unless you're in California. California is so strict on these things.
Imagine if this should happen in California, though.
The train company would probably rather go bankrupt than try to continue. But yeah, so, I mean, VOC is essentially organic compounds that have a high vapor pressure at room temperature. It's also known as low boiling points, but I just, it's pretty much like it. It's pretty much responsible for most odors, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty much like that. It's pretty much, if you can smell it, it's normally a VOC. So essentially what the EPA is stating is, let's see, you got butyl acrylate is a low odor threshold of 0.035 parts per million ppm, which means people can smell it at a very low levels, even if it's not toxic levels. But they did the screening at 0.1 ppm, which is pretty common for any VOCs, which means for any potential, like for example, when doing any sort of, what's it called? Air monitoring, for a great example, is when Portland, Oregon had that huge scare with lead in the air because some students happened upon some moss that had higher than average lead in a certain part of town, and so they were able to. It was a glass manufacturer that apparently was polluting lead. Pretty much, it was like that. It was pretty much you look for 0.1 ppms for any VOCs, and you do also like diesel as well, just to see if there's any diesel pollutions, and you do that. And it's pretty much essentially how they do that. They have a BAM machine or a BAMF machine. Wish I had my notepad next. I didn't think I would talk about this, but at this point, I'm just kind of rambling on because I think I'm the only thing keeping us.
I'm learning.
And this is something that I did in. I can't call it an internship, and I definitely can't state what agency, not agency, but what company I did it under and who I did it under. But I was in a pseudo internship where. I think it did sign an NDA. About this stuff where you pretty much load up a thing of tape, right? You know how I talked about the filters in a house, the HEPA filters, and it all depends on how big of a hole is in between, or how big of a hole. Either you can see it or you can't see it. Doesn't matter. It could be microscopic, could be macroscopic. And that's pretty much what it stopped it in. And so essentially this machine would read this reel of tape. And if it detect, 16 holes out of the 20 were blocked, that's the part. And then it'd do calculations of parts per million from there. Is essentially how we determine air quality. Is we pretty much take filters and stuff like that and determine if we can trap enough of it, how much is it in there. If that makes sense. So,
Gotcha.
If anything's smaller than the holes that they're using to monitor it, which they're obviously using pretty fine stuff, then normally it's the air safe to, breathe. But again, due to the odd smells, like they mentioned here, butyl acrylate. Acrylic. It's probably acrylic. Because of how sensitive noses are, and not only animals, but also, to be honest, humans have pretty sensitive noses. You're still going to smell something funky, even though it's technically safe to breathe. At least in America, it's safe to breathe.
Yeah.
Which, God forbids if that's actually true for, European nation, Canada, Mexico, whatever you want to call it.
In China, it's safe to breathe too.
In China, anything safe to breathe in there. But the affected water streams as well, let's get into that really quick, was apparently 2 runs off of wherever the fuck this happened. Sulphur Run and Leslie Run. Which, of course, they don't even talk about the watersheds here. Water runoff, let's see here. So to help recovery, the recovery operations for this was, they were using a vacuum truck and sorbent pads, which, in case you're wondering what a sorbent pad is, baby diapers? Those, have you ever cut open a baby diaper, either one of you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those stupid little pellets inside of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that I actually, this is going to sound weird. When I was at Oregon State, the water fluid dynamics teacher there was actually the person who invented them. He was very ecstatic with it. We cut open diapers probably 6 times during the freaking class because he really wanted us to learn about how these work. So essentially, it's just a chemical that, absorbs water and it just goes blonk and just becomes goo when it absorbs water. It's a very interesting design. Very complicated in terms of the chemistry behind it, but
are they decent for the environment or no?
It depends on how you make them. I mean, I bet you the first ones weren't, but they should be biodegradable. They should just degrade into the planet. The problem about that is if you're in this case, if you're absorbing contaminated water, you don't really want that going back to the environment. So normally what happens there is they would probably crush it, and so all the water's out and everything else like that, and then treat it, is what I would assume. Or to be honest, or burn it. That's another option. But after they did that, they pumped it, apparently at 3 locations along Sulphur Run and the confluence with Leslie Run. The East Palestine water plant confirmed there was no adverse effect to the treatment plant, so that's good. So that means any water going to the treatment plant is good. Yeah. Or, I would say, they're probably not equipped to handle these things, but in this case, they probably were notified, hey, start testing for this stuff.
Yeah.
Apparently, on the 5th as well, they took samples, surface samples, water samples, but they weren't expecting any results yet. So on the 6th after that, like I said, they're investigating the address of impacts to both of the runs past the lake or past the river. Of course, that's the major ones. They're not looking at any of the small lakes and stuff like that, of course. That's where the issue comes. They're looking at things that affect humans rather than things that affect the environment as much, because their first priority would be the residents and making sure the water's safe to drink, because weirdly America, despite not allowing that to be a right, they really do get uppity when it comes into human drinking water. They really want to make sure that's, if you have it, you want to make sure it's clean. But if it breaks on you, they don't care enough, so it's weird. It's weird how they do all that crap. Let's see here on the 7th, EPA is monitoring detected particulate matter from the fire because they burned the rail cars containing vinyl chloride. Did not detect chemical contaminants of concern in the hours following the controlled burn. I love that. Did not detect chemical contaminants of concern, which means they detected chemical contaminants of some kind. And I bet you if I looked at these documents they have, because it looks like you're allowed to look at the sample and stuff like that, and maybe I'll do that in a second. But let's see, resident area and tens of miles away.
They put out a lot of info on this shit, if you dig.
Oh, I mean, the EPA, you have to remember, right? So that's the greatness of America and their governmental agencies. All of it is public. You want to look at anything the government has done, all of it is public. All you got to do is look for it and dig for the .gov site. That's the biggest issue, is that .gov site is kind of hard to find. But, I bet you if you went to EPA.gov right now and looked up East Palestine derailment, a bunch of documents come up, because I have 3 of them up so far. And I haven't looked at all these other ones. And one of them has, I can share my screen really quick for a Discord, but they have an actual interactive, pretty much like a Google map thing of this.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
You can check sorbent tubes. You can look at Suma canisters, Tedley bears. I'm guessing these are different ways of picking up water. Sample media. So this is what so they're using these to collect samples. And then you have analytes, which is, what they're looking for. And then you have, wow, that is a lot. They're looking for a lot. Holy crap. Oh, look, there's the benzene. Acetone, which vinyl chloride comes from acetone, apparently. That's how we make it. Acrylic. We got biomethane. You got carbon tetrachloride. You got chloroform. They're looking for chloro. I wonder what chemical reaction there causes chloroform. Maybe this is just a blanket one for all these. Vinyl chloride. It's very interesting. Let's see what we got. Result less than parts per million. Yeah. Interesting. There we go. Reporting limit. Like right now, they have one that's less than. They just said less than. The one that has an exact where it's 32 parts per million. You have another one that's less than 55 parts per million, where the reporting limit apparently is, less than 34 parts per million. So, I mean, there are, out of all of these looking... Oh, well, that's a good one. Is that really parts per million? Is that parts per million? M divided by M3. Oh, parts per million is 1,000 of that, so that would be... What would that be? This is interesting, actually. Would that be 5 parts per million? I think that would be 5 points per million. 'Cause that's 500. No, that's not. Is it? Don't look at me. I'm going insane. I have no clue what these are. I can't remember what that thing is. I mean, it's interesting. Like, there are some high results of vinyl chloride in the area still. And when I say high, I mean like most of these are like 0.3, and a couple of them are 0.03. Some of these are 0.5. So significantly higher, but I still think it's within 1 parts per million, if that makes sense.
Am I in danger?
For that, I don't think so, considering the contaminated waters have been...
Your question, and I'll leave my house.
True. Well, I would be more thinking about your drinking water than anything else.
I would drink Pepsi.
Xander, so are the trees around him going to die?
Yeah. Oh, can we get
Sadly for him, no.
What? Why not? Explain why not.
Trees wouldn't be affected by this. It'd be affected by the burning.
How can we affect the trees by this?
A higher concentration
More
of
oil.
this.
How much?
More oil.
Is there a
More
point at which
oil.
can I kill the trees but not kill the humans? Like, where's the
No.
medium?
I mean, the medium would be burning the shit out of the tree without burning the shit out of a human.
Which one, like, will it kill humans before it kills the trees?
Yes. The concentration of toxic chemicals would probably kill. If you're killing a tree, you're killing a human. If you're using toxic chemicals, unless you're contaminating the soil itself rather than the air, would be my best guess. What is? Give me you. Let me just put this down. Parts per million. You have 0.01 parts per million. Okay. Gotta confirm ppm. That's great. I have the opposite. How about the other one? Well, I guess I'll just divide that by... Yeah. So it's significantly under 1 parts per million. So significantly... It should be safe to drink. Or rather, these are the air samples. So it should be safe to breathe in the area. You're going to smell something, though, for sure. Let's see. What else we got? We got daily, blah, blah, blah. By the 8th, they're already setting up for airborne contaminants. And over a period of time, so they're setting up a long-term study is what the EPA is now going to be doing, which is a very good idea. Because while we know, I bet you there hasn't been an event like this involving vinyl chloride in a grand scheme of things. Because a lot of testing for these chemicals, like the... If you guys know what an Is it MDAS? MSDS? The MSDS, where it pretty much tells you... you can request it pretty much if you work in a factory or if you're buying any chemical, you can request the store to give you an MSDS of it. And it tells you, oh, it's going to have, a long exposure to this gives you this. It pretty much tells you what's the lethal dose, how should you prevent yourself from being contaminated, what happens if you are contaminated, blah, 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 blah. It pretty much tells you the chemical details. The nitty-gritty of if you get exposed to this too long, you're going to get lung cancer, liver cancer, prostate cancer, what have you. Pneumonia, whatever the heck you want to call it.
Cancer becomes less of a threat once that shit gets cured, though.
Yeah, it's true. That is true. Once we're working on that soon, we'll take a pill. Okay.
Soon it'll be a wake up, take my daily cancer test. Ah, fuck. We gotta,
Yeah. Hey, we
got
solved
neck
AIDS.
cancer today.
Next is cancer, right?
I go fucking grab the neck cancer medicine from the cabinet.
The neck cancer medicine?
Yeah.
Is that's what you went with?
Yeah.
Huh.
I there was about 4 things before that, but determined if they were stream ready, no.
But apparently, let's see here. Around 9 p.m. on the 7th, air monitoring instruments detected increased concentration of VOCs downwind of the Fire. But they did remain...
The
Fire, they did remain lower than the screening levels for the VOCs, also known as 1 parts per million. Fires in those 2 rail cars containing non-hazardous cargo increased in intensity as they continued to work in the cars. Particulate matter was the only parameter detected above the screening levels, which means like particulate matter is like I mentioned, the diesel fumes and stuff like that. When you're looking at a fire, I'm sure all of you have looked at a fire at some point in your life. In that black stuff, the black soot that comes off it and stuff like that you can visibly see.
Yeah.
Like if you're burning a piece of paper, that's pretty much particulate matter. It's pretty much particles in the air. It's just very smaller. Very smaller. Good English. Why do you big lord when small word work fine?
Don't use big lord.
I'm rapid firing out facts at this point. I got like 10 more days of this shit to go through.
I mean, I'm ready. It's been entertaining.
It has been. It's interesting. Maybe we should do this more often. Fires. Let's see. Fires in the first 2. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Yep. EPA's of privating systems. Read more about particulate matter. Let's open that link. Why not? What is PM and how does it get into the air? I'm too lazy. Yeah, you got PM 10 and PM 250 or 2.5, which that's the particulate size. Like PM particulate matter 2.5 is fine inhalable particles with diameters that are generally 2.5 micrometers and smaller, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get into how small is 2.5 micrometers, do you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
Think about a single hair from your head, right?
Yeah.
70 times less than that, or rather 30 times less than your hair, the width of that.
Damn.
That's how small 2.5 micrometers is. So they do for that and 10. It's ridiculous. It's very, very fine. And so it's pretty much, they pretty much use the same thing as like what your lungs filter out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's essentially what they're trying to, replicate that is how much particulate matter would be stuck in your lungs if a human breathed it in, if I remember correctly from my schooling. Let's see here. Blah, 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 blah. Assisting in voluntary residential air screenings. As last night, screens 46 homes with 400 requests. Decrease the rate of screening. East. They're pretty much stating that they're going to grab more people. Ohio's EPA is investigating remediate. Yeah. And, they're looking at the water impacts. EPA took water samples. Norfolk Southern contractors installed a dam and a water bypass. So, and they've also stopped spillage.
Has happened.
Yeah, and you have to remember, like when we're talking like days, right? These guys work 24-hour fucking shifts. Yeah, like that's why I don't want to get into hazardous cleanup, because it's on call. It could happen at the dead of fucking night, and you could be going like 100, 200 miles out of your home to go to these places, and you're working rough hours, you're working hard, you're getting dirty, and it's not fun cleanup time. It is very, very boots on the ground, do as much as you can to prevent any more contamination.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was shocked they decided to burn it off first before moving it at all. Like I don't know. It's probably safer because, like I said, an explosion of actual chemical versus burning it off, which will lessen the harmfulness, but it does increase VOCs and crap like that. But let's see. February 11th, EPA has issued a general notice of potential liability letter to Norfolk Southern to document the release of the threat of release of hazardous substances, pollutants, or contaminants to the environment following the train derailment. The letter outlines EPA cleanup actions at the site and the potential to hold the railroad accountable for associated costs. I can read the letter. Maybe I should. What do we got here? I'll open it up. Oh, it's not that long. Oh, it's an email. They say letter. I see it's like 5 sentences. Let's see. Mrs. Dixit and Mr. Schuer. I'm going to guess those are... Oh, no, wait a minute. The first... Oh, there's... wait a minute, what? What is the... This isn't a letter. You just gave me the email stating the letter. What? Attached, please find a general notice. Yeah. Concerning the release. Okay. So they pretty much demanded, hey, here's... Yeah. Okay, so the Norfolk responded saying, yeah, they'll pretty much pay whatever the fuck they get told to pay. If that makes sense. Here we go. It's probably this one. General... Oh, it's a letter. How long is this letter? Oh, no. It's 4 pages. Okay, and it's chemical... What do we got? Explanation of potential liability. So they're pretty much going to charge people for conducted air monitoring and water sampling. Made the following observations. Materials released during the incident were observed and detected in... Ooh, here we go. Sulphur Run, Leslie Run, Bull Creek, North Fork, Little Beaver Creek, and the Ohio River.
Oh, that fucking last one, though?
Yeah, were absorbed entering storm drains, which means they go to the water treatment plant. Multiple rail cars and tankers were observed derailed, breached, and or on fire. or on fire. That's funny. But not limited to the following materials. You got vinyl chloride. You got ethylene glycol monobutyl ether, whatever. Ethyl exyl acrylic, acrylate. I don't fucking know. Isobutylene and butyl acrylate or acrylic. Also known as a bunch of fucking shit. Mostly, it looks like... I could look each one of these up. I mean, I guess I could. I guess we have an hour left anyways.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of wanted to know everything about this, and we're kind of getting that.
Yeah, I figured. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 tabs open of crap. A colorless liquid. So butyl acrylic is commonly used as a large scale as a precursor to polybutyl acrylic. Okay. Such materials are used in paints, sealants, coatings, adhesive, fuel, textiles, plastics, and caulk. And when I say caulk, just for people who don't understand, I know you, but I'm on Twitch. You know, you got to state things. Caulk is C-A-U-L-K, not C-O-C-K. We're talking like not the human. So this is pretty much what makes it's a. I'm gonna guess based off that it is a hydrophobic material to keep water out. That's essentially what this is. Let's see. What do we got? We got
hydrophobic in 2023, dude. What the fuck? How could it even?
I know, right? What's this other one? That was butyl acrylic. We got hydrocarbon with a chemical or isobutylene. Let's see. Production is a chemical grade. Isobutylene is typically obtained by dehydrating. A type of alcohol, which makes sense because it ends in ENE, which, if I remember correctly, any chemical ending ENE is alcohol, if I remember correctly. No, that's NOL. That's null. What is N to E? What is ENE? It's probably just a carbon. Organic. Okay, so it's an organic compound. So if burnt, it's going to be a VOC. What do you mean? It's a colorless flammable gas and is considered of considerable industrial value. Okay, thank you. Uses. The production of variable acrylic is activated with butane to produce acetane okay. Acetane. A fuel additive. Oh, is this what they added? No, that would be ethanol. Butyl rubber. Oxidants such as... Okay. Alright, this is interesting. Huh, so it makes polythene, polybutene. Interesting. So it's pretty much like, if I were to hazard a guess, it's some sort of stabilizer, maybe? It's used in, apparently it can be used to make a fuel additive. Interesting. It can be turned into a liquid. Antioxidants. And phenols. Okay, interesting. Weird. Okay, I'm not too sure what this is used for in production value. That's impressive. Oh, what do we got here? We got a boiling point, we got a melting point, a purest is colorless gas, thank you. Interesting. Well, let's see. Uses. Looks on various polymers such as butyl rubber. Most important applicant. Okay, so it seems like various polymers such as butyl rubber, with the most important application of butyl rubber is the manufacture of tires for cars and other vehicles. So it looks like it's the stuff made in... Okay, cool. So also highly toxic when burnt, which is probably why you're not allowed to burn tires. Interesting. Now we're getting fascinating with it. Now we're getting triggered. Of course, other people keep leaving. What do we got? We got ethyl hexyl acrylic. What do we got? Let's see. Preparation use. Acrylic adhesives. Okay. Cool. So it's just okay, cool. It's just just an acrylic. That's all it is. Just think of like the acrylic plastics and stuff like that. If that makes sense. And the reason why they were probably getting transported with butyl acrylic was because combined together is the major base monomers for the preparation of acrylic adhesives. So it's making acrylic glue, essentially, is probably why they were on there. Interesting. I wonder where this train was going. Wonder who was buying this crap. Huh. I feel like this is a one-man show at this point. I think it is. I don't know if any of these other two people are here.
What?
Xander, you here?
I'm here. I am listening to you.
Man, am I just that interesting?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Kind of killing it out here.
What do we got? We got monobutyrate. Okay. Well, that's not exactly what I was looking up, but let's see what this says. What do we got with NOAA.gov?
You're making that up. NOAA.gov?
Yeah. National... You've never heard of NOAA?
No.
Really? National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration?
Okay.
Really? Never? No?
No, you got me.
Interesting. Wow.
I've heard of Noah's Ark.
Wow. That's biblical. This is Richard Nixon. What do we got?
This might blow your mind. I don't know how old you think I am, but I wasn't around when Noah was running things.
Neither was I, but I know of Noah. Great, I don't care about the first date. I care about what is it? What is it used
We're
in?
talking about I Am Jesus, video game announcement.
Mm-hmm. Now, where's that news? Why don't we talk about that? All right, so another one of these things. Okay, cool. There's another monobutyl ether, which probably makes another acrylic. Well, 2-butoethanol, which is other names. Oh, yeah, other names are right there. Okay, so apparently this is a solvent for paints and surface coatings. So think like acetone. Products that contain this acrylic resin formations. So it's asphalt relations, firefighting foam. So a lot of shit. Cosmetics, dry cleaning solutions, liquors, or lacquer... whatever, the shit that you lacquer a thing of wood, varnishes, herbicides, latex paints, enamels, silicone caulk, products containing the compound are primarily found at construction sites, automobile repair shop, paint shops, and facilities producing, sterilizing, and cleaning productions. Essential molecule is both polar and non-polar end. That's cool. Is useful for removing both polar and non-polar surfaces like grease and oils. Is also approved by the U.S. FDA to be used as direct and indirect food additives. Let's go! So we're eating this shit, is what I've just found. And lastly, vinyl chloride, which I already talked about. It's made to use, PVC and blah 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 blah. When burned, it becomes, hydrochloric acid. I see 5 rail car tankers of the chloride were intentionally breached. The vinyl chloride was diverted to an excavated trench and then burned off. Here's the contaminated soil and free liquids were observed and potentially covered and or filled during the reconstruction of the rail line. including portions of the trench burn pit that were used to open. Oh, really? Oh, well, that's great. So what I've just learned is the train company in all their gloriousness burnt it into a pit and then used some of that soil that was in that pit to remake the rail line.
It's top tier.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Tier.
Really?
How bad is that? I don't understand.
Were observed and potentially covered and or filled during reconstruction of the rail line. So they just filled it. What the fuck? So you demonstrate that the org may or not operate the site or may have generated or transported materials at the site, but this letter notifies your potential liability. Encourages you, a PRP, to agree to reimburse EPA. I like that. Encourages you to state you're going to pay for everything else. What happens? Must be initiated as quickly as possible. Therefore, the EPA does not intend to utilize special notice procedure under blah, 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 blah. 1 calendar day. So pretty much, you better tell them, again, that your willingness to cost. Yeah, here we go. The incident described above to reimburse EPA for costs. And that's how the EPA normally gets their money, is something happens, and they're like, oh, okay, well, we're going to go out there. So they don't, I won't say they don't necessarily pay their staff via the government money. It's more of like, because they had to send X amount of people out, they'll make them pay X amount of people. I think of the EPA as like a general fucking contractor, essentially, for that one. Interesting. That's an interesting letter. I'd give that a read, if you actually care about this much. That's fascinating. I wonder what the CRCLA act is. Huh. Well, we can close out of those now.
Is this comparable to Chernobyl? Like, on a scale, even?
On a scale, the biggest issue is, like, right, Chernobyl, if any radiation, right, actually fucking happened anywhere in, like, a major population area again, we still would not be able to handle it well. Chernobyl is still significantly worse. The reason why people are calling this Chernobyl 2.0, including myself to some degree, is because of, I mean, wildlife up to tens of miles was found dead. That's fucking crazy to me, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is, tell me another incident where something like that happened for that widespread, right? Like the oil spills have been bad and they kill a lot of animals, but it's a very concentrated area of where that oil spill is, because normally we contain it pretty easily because it's in the water, it doesn't get into the air. And it's normally in the ocean, which means it's concentrated to the ocean.
There's a chance there could just be no fish in that area when it happens anyway.
Also, yeah, birds, things like that. I mean, the big issue with this is because it's happened in a populated area, primarily a town of 5,000 plus anything downstream and, God forbid, downwind of it, is going to be contaminated. It gets so bad of these things. Like, oh, speaking of which, why not we take a look at that New York Times article talking about Chernobyl 2.0. Dead fish have floated in nearby creeks and an unnerving aroma has lingered in the air. What? No, the situation is disastrous in many ways. After the stream derailed, fire broke out. I like how they say a fire broke out. It wasn't a fire. They deliberately burnt it because, yeah. Why is this considering? Interesting. That's weird. Whatever. I'm gonna close that article. It's Hubjob. It probably has some interesting facts there, but I mean, the biggest reason why I would call it "quote unquote" Chernobyl 2.0 is because of that fact. Is it's such a widespread issue, and Chernobyl was pretty widespread, but it was still it was in Chernobyl, right? And this, it's going to be East Palestine or Palestine. It's going to be concentrated in there, and it's going to have some you have to remember, these aren't forever chemicals, right? They're not going to stay in the water, they're not going to stay in the air, they're not going to stay in the soil forever. But it's going to be very hard to get rid of them because it's not a naturally involving compound.
I lived through 9/11. I get to say I lived through this too. Then, like, it was just another world. I lived through it.
Because of the times we live in, I doubt. Like, I'll give it a month, and people are going to still talk about it, but it's not going to have the same traction. You know, because of the culture we have.
Could it get worse? Could it get like vastly worse very fast?
I don't think it can get vastly worse. Like I said, the only way it can get worse is if somehow the groundwater supply gets super contaminated because it isn't actually filtering it out because it's a man-made chemical rather than a naturally occurring one. But even there, it said that it breaks down pretty easily, into formaldehyde and stuff like that, which isn't good to drink, but it's something that we know of and we know how to counteract. Because I can't remember if formaldehyde is natural or not, but they've been using it since a bombing fluid in Egypt.
Yeah.
So it's a well-known chemical, and we know how to stop people from drinking it. When is it safe and when is it not? It's pretty well tested to the point where we actually eat it. A lot of food, or some food, has it, at least in America. And this is where I love the FDA, because like one of the things we were talking about. Which one was it? I can't remember which one it was, but it was a fucking known food additive, and it can cause so many issues. That's why I personally think that a lot of the obesity problems in America doesn't come from overeating. It just becomes all the chemicals that are in all of our food. You ever look at the back of a fucking, hot dog or something? It has a fuck ton of additives in it.
A back of a hot dog? No, the packaging maybe.
Yes, the packaging, you little shit.
If my hot dog has writing on the bag, then we have problems.
Hey, some USDA beef has it on it to prove that it's grade 5, grade A5. Whatever. So, I don't think it's really comparable to Chernobyl, but I think I can safely say it was the worst national disaster that happened in America, I think, to date. It's hard to say that, too, because, I should say the most environmentally... The biggest environmental disaster caused by, I won't say human intervention, because, in my opinion, some of the worst ones we've had, not many people talk about, the radiation underneath schools due to potentially not where they tested the nuclear bomb, but natural radiation coming from a rock and got into the water supply. Or there's also some cases where, due to the amount of bullets that military bases would shoot into a firing range and stuff like that, the lead runoff got into some school waters, and that caused a huge issue as well. There's a bunch of cases where I just say it's the most impactful, I think, direct, obviously caused by human and not caused by an indirect thing like water runoff issue in America to date. I think I'd have to double check some American environmental histories. I'd almost say the world, but I can't say that because I don't know about the world's history of environmental disasters. But it's definitely the most modern one, and it's definitely the most harmful. It could have been way worse, but it was handled okay-ishly. Definitely not greatly, but it was handled good enough.
Good enough.
But the biggest issue is now we're going to have, and this is where the EPA is pretty much telling these people that they've pretty much forced themselves into paying the EPA a certain amount of money per year until they stop conducting studies, which will be a long time, because now we got to look at the potential outpacks or the effects of this. And for all we know, the effects could be nothing to humans, the streams, the soil. Or it could be Chernobyl. It could be people start growing third arms. It could be children are starting to get born with, big-ass brains. It literally could be anything. That is a problem with these type of chemicals, that we don't test fully due to skimping on it from 1 and 2, because why would we test this at a large scale against humans, I'm sure they tested against animals, but it was such a small study still, I'm sure. But it becomes a constant monitor of this stuff, because you can have a bad wind and all that chemical that you just burnt off comes back into the town. You can have, like I said, it doesn't break down fully while going to the groundwater, and suddenly you have a huge contaminated groundwater source. And because the groundwater source is contaminated, that means the soil around it. Because the primary issue with something getting in the water, right, isn't that it's in the water so much, which is a bad thing, but because of how rivers work, anything that touches the outside edge, actually what happens to the water, it's not like a riverbed is waterproof, right? It's not like it's a plastic liner. It's dirt, it's soot, it's rocks, it's sand, it's this or that. It's porous material where water's going to flow through to it. And that's why, if you have a large stream going slowly, you notice the water input is slower, lower down, it's less than it was at the top, because some of the water is getting absorbed. And that's where, if it dries out because the water is getting absorbed, not so much evaporated. But evaporation is also another issue. So you now have a bunch of soil that's now contaminated, is where I'm trying to get at. And if you don't deal with that, also known as if you don't remove it, the water is going to keep on getting contaminated. and contaminated and contaminated and contaminated. It's not going to go away, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest issue with waterway contamination. Good example is Portland, Oregon. Again, Willamette River. They've been dredging that thing for years, trying to get rid of all the contaminated soil in it. But it's hard and it's long process of work. Because you don't have to get all of it out, but you have to get the majority of it out. And the bigger issue of it is, where do you put that soil? First off. Second of all, how do you get new soil that isn't going to affect the environment? Because if you get a soil from 4 states down with a worm that you don't have, you just invited an invasive species in. And it might thrive and it might die. Things like that. There's a huge process that goes into this kind of stuff. So that's pretty much, I bet you if I look at the rest of this, it's pretty much talking about getting rid of the contaminated soil, which I bet you these rivers, I do not show much, I don't know what, what was it, Bull Creek, Sulphur Run, Leslie Run, the Ohio River, and a couple other small rivers. I don't know how big these are. I don't know how far down the contamination went before they managed to dam it off. So it's hard to tell how many potentially miles of soil they have to dredge up and replace. And that's where it becomes the issue. And that's where a lot of the effort in water remediation comes from. Is having to now clean these chemicals out of the soil so then you can potentially use it somewhere else. Where a lot of times, to be honest with you, they'll just take it out. And this is the fun part, at least with like the Willamette River in Portland, is you have to dam off the section of soil you're using because the river is still contaminated from upstream, unless it's clean upstream, which it isn't. And so you have to pretty much make a wall around the soil, right? And you have to make sure you get all the contaminated soil that you want to get out of. And then you have to put back clean soil. But the moment you put back clean soil and you undam it, if the river's still contaminated, guess what you just did to your new soil?
Contaminated.
You contaminated it. So it could be a potential forever thing, depending on... You have to first remove the source of pollution. Okay, once the source of pollution is. Then you have to start removing the soil slowly. Well, first you should probably remove the contaminated water, the heavy contaminated water. Then after that's gone, now you just have to get rid of the slightly contaminated water. But for the most part, you need to prioritize on the soil, which is heavily contaminated from the first time. So you have to remove it slowly but surely throughout the time by damming it off. I mean, ideally, you get no water in it. You clean up all the soil. You put in new soil, or the old soil, treat it again, and you let water go through it, and it should be fine. But a lot of times you can't do that though, because it's a large body of river that people are counting on for their livelihood. So you can't stop the river. Or like it's the Ohio River, which I assume is some sort of point of commerce to some degree. I'm sure boats go up it. I'm sure cities use it for water. Things like that. Yeah. And so you can't just stop that. It's probably big enough that you also can't fucking dam it easily. What you do is you just cordon off sections of it that are contaminated slowly but surely and you remove it. And it can take years of process. Like I said, the Willamette River has been worked on since the 80s and it isn't finished. It's been 40 years or so. It's gotten significantly better, but it's not perfect. Yeah, what to see? The 12th is now... for example, there have been some exceedance of PM 2.5 screen values, both upwind and downwind of the dry site. So likely had another cause. Don't know about that one. It could also just be smog. Indoor screening, that's what I care about. All right, so apparently as of the 12th,
Yes.
give me a second. Hydrogen chloride. I did die. Yeah. Hydrogen chloride is just a gas form of fucking hydrochloric acid. Good. As of the 12th, 210 homes have been screened. To date, no detections of vinyl chloride or hydrogen chloride were identified.
Identified.
I'm reading. Yeah, okay, so this kind of states what I was kind of talking about, where it starts. Screening levels of exposure limits are concentrations of specific chemicals in media, air, water, soil. They state a process they're using. Determine if more evaluation is needed. Levels above a minimum risk level are not necessarily harmful. The potential for harm depends on how high the levels were and how long the exposure lasted. along with personal traits and habits. So it's pretty much stating there is a general rule to these things. End all be all, though. You know, it kind of depends. And so that's why they're going to be doing a long-term study, as I'm guessing. Re-entry air screenings are underway. Community air monitoring will continue 24 hours a day. As of yesterday earnings, to date, still nothing. There's 2 more Summa air canisters for continuous sampling. Local schools and library were screened yesterday. Stations. Okay. So far, they still have not detected anything above action level in terms of the air monitoring. They haven't mentioned water or soil in a while. Let's see. Early this afternoon, stated emergency response on the 14th. Regional Administrator Deborah Shore issued it. On the evening of the 13th, EPA discontinued air monitoring for phosgene and hydrogen chloride community air monitoring. After the fire was extinguished on the 8th, the threat of vinyl chloride fire producing a phosgene and hydrogen chloride no longer exists. Also noticed because they're not burning it anymore, there's no need to test for it. And so there will still be 24-hour community air monitoring of other chemicals of concern. So it pretty much reduces the cost more. They're just trying to do everything they can to reduce cost. So if they don't have to waste more, let's say if they're using BAMF machines, like a BAMF 2000, then it's, it saves money. Because it's fucking costly to run those things. 14th. Still nothing. The total drinking water well sample today is 21. Still nothing. Stating that the train company in Norfolk Southern is providing bottled water at the Family Assistance Center. And there's a address there. And they're also bringing it to East Palestine in the city.
East Palestine. It's a weird name for a city.
It is. In Ohio, of all places. It's weird. That's why I'm keeping being like, what the fuck? Okay. Let's see. Michael Reed will be arriving. EPA Administrator, so one of the top dogs. Administrator will meet with the city, the state, and federal leaders involved in the response, hear directly from residents about the impacts. So now they're starting to investigate rather than test things. Now they're past the, okay, crisis averted. Now we're going to start talking about the how, the why, who's responsible, things like that. And this is where I talked about they're telling people, if you have a private well water, please get it tested. Municipal well water is fine. Okay, then we come to the 18th, the most recent update they have. Well, actually, wait a minute. Not so much. We have one today. Okay, cool. The second most recent. It continues the air monitoring and collecting air samples throughout the community. Blah, blah, blah. EPA also assisting air screenings. Blah, blah, blah. But so far, no exceedances for air quality standards on indoor ones, which makes sense because you have a filter in it. And as long as you know how to replace it, you're replacing it. Some people don't know how to replace it. And when you don't replace it, well, you should get that looked at because for all you know, the air conditioner's clogged and causing condensation to come down and destroy your entire condo.
Yeah, I feel like I started feeling that was starting to get targeted, and then you just really followed up with the rest of it, didn't you?
Yeah, I sure did. Please change your fucking filters because legitimately it does help with the air quality in your home. And if you don't,
filter?
The furnace filter. Yeah.
Oh, we do that. Yeah.
Well, not you. I meant the condo that my dad and my stepmom bought.
Oh.
Yeah, legitimately, that's why it was destroyed. Was because they didn't fucking change that, and they buried the air conditioner because they're fucking slobs. But whatever. Oh, here we go. To date, 48 wells have been sampled for the municipal water. 45 in Ohio and 3 in Pennsylvania. Yeah, and they're still just saying they're handing out bottled water. But the results show no water quality concerns still. So there you go. None. Which makes sense because the well is coming from the groundwater. So like I said, I don't know how long it would take for the groundwater to be contaminated if there was contamination. But like I said, how much soil it has to go through to get to the groundwater, though, I would assume most of the contaminants are gone. That's normally what happens. Okay, here we go. Site soil. This is the good stuff. This is the stuff that starts to matter at this point. We're now 14 days. We're now 2 weeks in. And now they're looking at the soil because the water's clean, the air is clean. Now it's what do we got to do now? They're pretty much stating support the Ohio EPA, oversee emergency remediation efforts, being placed on recovery of pooled liquids. I think I already talked about this. So pretty much stating they're removing all the pooled liquids on the ground. So let's say there's a thing of oil on the ground that hasn't seeped into the soil so much. Remove that liquid. Excavation of heavily contaminated soil and all remaining rail cars. They're pretty much stating we're trying to stop the contamination now. Now that we've treated most of the other stuff. Now it's get rid of the contamination source and go back and treat everything else again. It's pretty much what's going to happen. And they stated that they diverted all upstream water around the contaminated area, which again is hard to do because it could still be contaminated in the soil over there. Could have gotten over there, but for the most part, it should be clean. Oh god, I need water or whiskey. I'll do whiskey. I don't have any more water. All right, then we get to today. First things first, the first thing to say is EPA's East Palestine information line is open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The phone line is experiencing high call volume. If you're unable to get through to your operator, please leave a message. Agency operators are checking voicemails and returning calls regularly and will be in touch. So if you have an issue, I doubt you're watching this for the most part, but call the number. It's there. Apparently it's 215-814-2400. So, you can talk about how you have issues. All right, let's see. As of today, EPA is still continuing their 24-hour monitors. Air quality in the community remains normal, according to air monitoring data. It is also still collecting air samples, though, at the incident location and upwind. Preliminary analysis of air laboratory data is consistent with real-time air monitoring, indicating no air quality issues. So far, they're saying there's nothing that's quote-unquote above issue levels. So there's probably still levels of it, but not issue levels. So 551 homes have been screened with no air quality concerns. They have completed all their scheduled appointments, but they will still continue to offer the service. Then you have the water well. The main water well shows no water quality concerns. I stated a total of 56 wells, 53 in Ohio, 3 in Pennsylvania. According in 2 days, nothing's happened. EPA will continue to be able to collect additional water samples as requested, though. During site cleanup, EPA is providing support. Yep. So literally the same thing as they did on the 18th. It looks like pretty much copy and paste from the last update. So essentially, that's it. Let's see. Air monitoring sampling. We can talk about the water sampling. Because we already talked about the air monitoring. They're using, it looks like sorbent tubes, Suma canisters, and Edlar bags, which I'm not quite sure what any of those are. Sorbent tubes, obviously, are just a tube. Lex things, but let's look them up. If I am so inclined. Of course, stop me if you guys have any question.
No questions right now.
Okay, sorbent tubes. What do they look like? Well, they are. That night, Joe. The sorbent tube is one of the types of sampling media used in air sampling into which the contamination collected. SQ, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Silica gel, yep. So it's just, that's what I thought. It's literally just the diaper compounds. In a tube. Interesting.
In a tube.
I'm shocked they're using that for air quality.
So is this as serious as you thought it was prior to the research?
It's pretty serious. I mean, the research is kind of making me think it's not as serious, but it still is pretty. It's still a pretty serious issue. Like, legitimately, had this happen in my opinion, like the 80s, it would have been a lot worse than it was today. Of course, due to things, but it's interesting. Suma canisters. Let's see. What do they got? Fascinating. Another silicate-based capturing of air. So it's just another type of filter. It's literally just using silicates, okay, to capture it. Very minute particle matter. Interesting. Okay, I've never heard of that either. That looks weird. And because it's coded, allows... fascinated. But no, I would say it's probably...
Villagers in the call?
In the call? Yeah. If I were to hazard a guess, this probably isn't as bad as what everyone's making it out to be. I mean, I don't want to undertone anything, but...
Well, we're not talking to the people. We're talking strictly environmentally.
Well, part of the environmental science is talking about the people. Because again, despite everyone's people
did die.
Did people die?
Pretty sure, yeah.
No, I didn't know if anybody died yet. I guess I could look it up. I hadn't looked at death yet. Good point. Deaths. I don't see any death. What?
No one's dead. Not a person. Not even the train driver. The conductor.
Fatalities. Maybe something was. Here we go. Here's a Wikipedia article. Like, we trust that. Let me look up death. Wow, they have 82 sources on this page already. Holy shit, Wikipedia is going to town. Apparently, there's been a bunch of conspiracy theories regarding this too. Funny. Killed 3,500 small fish estimate, and 7.5 miles worth of streams. Foxes. I know a bunch of chickens died. Yeah, I don't see any like actual human deaths though. I mean, feel free to check that though and see, because maybe by the time this is out, maybe there's more. But interesting. So they're pretty much using. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll move on past the air sampling. Water sampling. They're using. Okay, fascinating. They're just taking samples, which just means just putting a cup, a little beaker full of water, putting a cap on it, sealing it, sending it off to someplace. Sediment, yeah, the same thing. Okay, interesting, neat. Yeah, to my knowledge, I don't think anyone's been killed from this, and that's another reason why it's not as bad as I think it is. I mean, again, for all we know, in 5-10 years,
people had died, but I guess wrong.
In 5-10 years, right? I mean, I don't know if you looked it up or not, because I would just double check me, but 5-10 years, we could have a mass people of dying of cancer, especially liver cancer, depending on how it is. You could see a bunch of, like I said, the soil could not be fully cleaned. You could have long-lasting effects, but because of how stringent the EPA is, I doubt that's going to happen. Like I said, they're going to be conducting air monitoring, water sampling, soil samples. Soil samples will probably be the first one to end, because that's pretty cut and dry. Water samples probably a little after that will be cut, and then air monitoring will probably happen or continue for, if I were to hazard a guess, at least half a year, up to a year. It might be close to like 3 months, and they just cut it off there because it's like non-minimal. But as long as they're still detecting something, they'll normally still continue it, just in case it has a backlash. But for the most part, normally what happens is you have an increase of, date of disaster, and that'll be the all-time high, and then it will normally be a downward trend to the point where they're like, okay, now it's completely non-significant. And so there's no need to monitor it anymore. But that initial concentration of all these toxic chemicals such as vinyl chloride, hydrogen chloride, also known as gaseous form of hydrogen chloric acid, also known as hydrogen chloride, also known as hydrochloric acid, which, because, there's going to be both. Depending on, because they didn't have an evacuation alert, but they pretty much, had people come back in the day after, 2 days after? Question mark after the fire?
2 days. I want to say it was 2 days.
I want to say it was 2 days. I think that's what we saw, but I'd have to look it up again, which I could. Why'd my music stop? It was just super low. It might just be super low. But I digress. What could happen though is, because like the CDC just said, was it depends on how long you're exposed, how much of it you were exposed to, and those two factors alone mean what the risks are. And so if I were in that area, especially if you have a doctor, which hopefully you do, hopefully you can get tested every once in a while to make sure. And of course, if you're experiencing any adverse effects, sore throats, this and that didn't exist beforehand, contact your doctor, see what's happening. Even tell the EPA, because the EPA does like knowing these things, because maybe things are bad. What that is going to happen, though, is they're going to get a lot of false cause about people thinking they're sick because of this thing, and then they're not, blah, 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 blah. Because that whole entire issue of people mentally telling themselves that they have this issue because they read it online. And the classic, placebo effect that happens along with that. But for the most part, that kind of covers everything. So they burn things that make PVC pipe. They burn things that are made into resin casts, tires, food additives, things like that. They burned a lot of industrial chemicals. They spilt a lot of industrial chemicals as well. It seems like as of this moment, they're still cleaning the soil. That's the first thing, and moving the train cars. That will be the longest process. I would be shocked if we hear that they finish that within a month, because removing the soil is not an easy task. Because, like I mentioned, you have to dam it off, which they've already done that, or diverted it rather, and then you have to remove the soil. You have to treat it and put it back, or you have to get new soil in and treat it, and then now you have free soil.
Free soil.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's essentially what it is. I don't think it's nearly as big as what people thought it was going to be. It could have been a lot worse. Like I've mentioned a couple of times. Like I said, if before they burnt it, it exploded, then you would have had pure, vinyl chloride in the sky, in the air. That would have been a much worse outcome than burning it, I think, after doing some research. I know that kind of contradicts what I talked about with Sander earlier, which you guys didn't hear. It was a conversation with him. But I think that was probably the best case scenario, despite all the particulate matter that's going to come from it, all the nasty odors, all the nasty chemicals. But those chemicals, I mean, it's the classic choosing a greater evil, right? It's a classic, this thing can give you this, 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 and this, or this and this high of a concentration will give you this, instead of a might. So instead of the town being evacuated and completely, chained off for the next decade, it's probably going to it looks like it's going to be probably about a 6-month cleanup, if I were to hazard a guess. Probably less, but it will probably be like it probably will be like 2-month cleanup and then 4 months of monitoring. It could even just be a 4-month cleanup, or 3 months. It's 2 months of cleanup and then 1 month of monitoring. It's hard to tell. Only time will tell. But that's my take on it. It sucks. I think, to be honest with you, I know there's already a class action lawsuit against Norfolk going on, which means the town will get like $2, which sucks. The company will get a little slap on the wrist, but that's normally what happens. I mean, that's the thing about how the laws work, right? You get a fine. So technically it's legal if you pay for it. That's always, I can't remember where I heard that from, long time ago. But I mean, that's essentially true, where, oh no, you polluted the environment. Well, I have to pay a $3 million fine, but I got away with it practically. Your brand image is probably completely gone, but for the most part, I mean, you get scotch-free, which sucks. But I'm hoping this, mixed with, like I mentioned the last podcast, with Shell being sued and a couple other things, we might start seeing a movement for companies to start internalizing their externalities, which in this case would be if Norfolk has to pay for the entire cleanup, which they do, and that's how the EPA works, which is nice. If they have to then, let's say they find out that there's a significant, let's say after a couple of years, the town starts getting a bunch of cancer, right? And scientists do a study, or rather the EPA or the FDA, who the fuck handles health concerns? I guess maybe the CDC. Does a study, and it shows, these are common symptoms of, vinyl chloride. Is there a significant, they do a, analysis of data, is there a significant increase in cancer in this town before and after this, chemical, or the train derailment causing this chemical could be introduced to the environment? If yes, then ideally, this is where it becomes okay, cool. They figured out that the train, caused it. And that's where then people have to go individually seeking compensation from the company. And that's if the company's still around by the time this happens. Rather than it automatically being like, this company caused this, so let's just give these people some money. Instead, there has to be suing. And that's the problem in America, is you have to sue someone in the court of law to pretty much make them admit guilt, or they settle out. A great example is like you remember the Volkswagen diesel stuff, right? The diesel scandal where Volkswagen was caught falsifying data based on, because
No?
you didn't hear about this a couple years ago? I guess it was before I met you. It was back when I was in early years of college. So Volkswagen and a lot of other car manufacturing, I can't remember all of them, but primarily Volkswagen, because that was the one that got, the car manufacturer that got caught red-handed. Pretty much what they were doing is, you know how, you won't know this, but Alex, you know how the DEQ, they just come in and they plug a thing into your...
I don't have that at all, but I know you've bitched about it enough, so I know.
Oh. Well, you go to the DEQ. Back in the day, they stuck a little air monitoring type, or air monitoring, air pollution, for particulate matter, like we talked about, in your tailpipe, and they read the values directly, like, okay, you're under the legal limit, you're good. Pay us like $50 and you're good. Here are your tags. It's every time you have to update tags, and some states are different, blah, 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 blah. If you're an old enough car, you're exempt. If you're a new enough car, if you're an electric car, I think you're exempt automatically because you don't have a tailpipe. But pretty much nowadays, though, you plug it into a digital port. Think of like a VGA port, or like, like the 2 and 8 pins on the graphics card. Yeah, it's pretty much that. And you plug that in. And they read because your computer handles all that, so there's a little set of readouts that they read. And so they read that and they're like, oh, okay, cool. Volkswagen was falsifying the digital readout. So one day, I guess a group of students figured this out, where that data and the data coming out of the tailpipe was different, which caused a huge investigation, which they found out a huge conglomerate of manufacturers doing this. So for example, Daimler settled out and didn't admit guilt because they were the ones that ratted on Volkswagen as well when, asked.
Right.
So they pretty much got off scotch-free, but they still had to get fined and blah, blah, blah. So in the court, instead of getting sued a bunch of times by the government, they pretty much stated, yeah, here's $2 million, we're done, but we didn't do anything. Had nothing to do with this, blah, blah, blah. But because of that, a lot of people thought Daimler was guilty. Meanwhile, there's a lot of other companies. I think Volkswagen finally lost their case like 6 years after it happened. But it takes time to be in the courts. That's the point of the court system, is to tie it up, taking too long, and so people forget about it. I'm shocked you didn't hear about this, Sander. I'm assuming you did, Alex.
You know me.
Yeah,
I don't,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't pay attention to car stuff.
A good point. Or environmental stuff. But yeah, so that was a huge scandal. And things like that is kind of what happens, where if it's known to have, like, if it had cancerous effects or had negative effects towards humans, EPA might sue, or the quote unquote the government. It would be the EPA versus Norfolk Southern, right? And then they'd get compensation for the town. CDC might do that later if it's, like I said, found a significant correlation and causation of this event, but it'd be hard to do. But besides that, it's hard for an individual to do that, because then nowadays it's a little easier because an individual can bitch about it on social media and then gain following through that and gain traction and blah 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 blah. But it's still not easy because, again, all that, it's so hard to figure out misinformation is, on the internet. So ultimately, I would say it's probably less dangerous than what we thought it would be, but it's also such a harmful chemical and such, I want to say a new chemical, but in the grand scheme of the Earth, it's a pretty new chemical, and it's a pretty big chemical spill. So we don't know what's going to happen, and that becomes the true question: is what happens next? Which is now the stage we're on. Which is a pretty dangerous stage to be, because it's the point of unknown. Well, yeah, that's pretty much what I got on this topic. Is hopefully, again, I truly do hope, because I think the next big environmental thing that we as environmentalists can do is having companies, one, get taxed more so they can start fucking paying for stuff, and two, internalize their externalities. Because the moment that happens, then all these chemical spills, all these different things will stop happening as much, because they'll do more research into the chemicals. They'll do more research into making sure, like, the bulkheads on an oil ship are actually properly reinforced. They'll stop relying on third-party, contractors. Yeah, that makes sense.
Makes sense.
So that's my take. That's my hope. I can't believe I just fucking spoke for pretty much 2 hours.
You love to see it.
My throat is quite parched because I ran out of water about an hour ago. Yeah, essentially. I mean, that's my take. It pretty much. I mean, there was a lot of nasty chemicals in there. It also goes to show that we put some nasty chemicals in our food, and we willingly eat that because we have nothing better to do, because we don't determine where we get our food from, and that can go to a whole different can of beans if we wanted. But essentially, what this kind of shows, it's another big. Again, it's like it's another. I won't say big company because I've never fucking heard of Norfolk Southern before this. But essentially what's happening is another company fucked up in a big way. Because I believe this all started because, like I said, they didn't mark things as hazardous when they should have marked it as hazardous to cut costs. In different ways of cutting costs, such as that. So, I mean, that is it's a legitimate issue. I mean, companies do that all the time. If they can skimp a buck now for something that could potentially cost them millions, they might as well do it, because it's only millions when it comes to something that could gain them billions or something like that. And it's quite sad. It is quite sad. Like a great example of this is like the oil industry, right? They had, I think at this point, there's been enough proof against the big oil companies that they had reasonable data by scientists proving that oil and burning of it, particularly fossil fuels, is contributing to global warming in a significant manner. And they kept that from wraps from the government for the longest time, up until like I think a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now, where we pretty much got one of the top execs on, I think it was an undercover agent of the Scotland Yard, pretty much faked an interview, and the top exec pretty much admitted guilt to that. And so that kind of that opened up a can of beans where we pretty much now have, I think, paper proof. I can't remember now. Yeah. So that's what I hope is next, is more things like, I don't hope more things like this happen, but I hope that with those things that have happened, we're able to potentially change the way that companies run in terms of that, and change the way that they think. Because even just the social media, like, oh, now no one wants to buy anything that Norfolk Southern has transported or something like that. No one's going to look that deep into it. But, if it was like Tesla who did this, then people were like, I'm not buying a Tesla anymore. Things like that. Every time a Tesla hits a kid, people stop buying Tesla. And Elon Musk goes on a rant on Twitter and then buys Twitter.
And then locks your two-factor authentication text message.
No, that's just the text messaging. You can still use Google Authenticator. But the moment he bought it, I learned this because after that I looked at my two-factor. I'm like, I have two-factor on. Looked at it and it was off. So I tried signing it back up into it. And it's like, no, that's the wrong code. I'm like, what? And so I had to redo my two-factor authentication, which I think happened when he bought the damn fucking platform.
Well.
So I bet you we just disabled every two-factor authentication period. And then now you have to re-enable it.
What?
So fucking stupid. Yeah. Well, that marks about 2 hours. I mean, I can. Like I said, it seems like you guys don't have too many questions about it. I mean,
no,
it's pretty straightforward.
Episode.
Oh God. I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, regretfully, it lit my. It sucks for the residents and anybody that drinks that water, that live near that. I'm happy that so far it doesn't seem like there's any deaths besides chickens and wildlife in the area that people are raising. I hope to God no dogs died, or any cats, or any domesticated animal, pets, whatever. I know chickens did, so maybe some did. But ultimately, it's just... What?
So, Claude, I have a question.
Oh, God, what?
Well, what's the environmental fact?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Let's go.
For fuck's sake. You know how long... I spent, like, hours researching this topic so I can talk for 2 hours, because I figured this out.
Anything else, did you?
No!
All right, hit us with it. What's the environmental facts of the day?
Oh, God. What about the BAMP machines that I talked about? Does that not count?
No, that was
Oh, my
this
God.
moment.
I'm so happy with myself right now.
I knew someone was going to do it, and I should have prepared, but I had to deal with water damage in my fucking toilet. Shut you.
He's buying time in order to Google this.
I don't even have the fucking strength to Google this. I don't even know what I want to Google. I mean, the EPA was founded in the 70s. There you go.
I said an environmental fact, not an EPA historical fact.
That's technically an environmental fact. Did you know the first? Do you know what prompted? Not the EPA to be founded, but I know I talked about Silent Spring in the past. I could bring that back around. But I've already talked about it without being an environmental fact. But there was a tanker back in the sometime in the 1900s, after the 50s, before the 80s, somewhere around that timeline. It was coming from Alaska down the Pacific coast, full of oil. This was, I think, if it was the first major oil spill that prompted like a lot of environmental agencies going into and like prompted the whole entire. If you know how an oil tanker ship is, there's like the whole reinforcement. It's nuts nowadays, but back in the day it wasn't. And so what happened was this guy or the ship, it didn't beach itself, but it got too close to the shore, and so it scraped the bottom of the ocean and got a giant, massive gash in the side of it and caused a massive oil spill. And that's what prompted environmental regulations towards oil spills, for the most part. It caused there to be heavy regulation on what type of boats can transport oil, how much oil can be transported, this and that. With a side of that, I also know, I think Biden say no more oil on United States drilling on oil on U.S. soil or waters? Did he say that? I can't remember someone who said that. It's either that or the opposite of we're going to increase drilling because we're going to stop it elsewhere. But I think it was no more drilling on U.S. soils. And more related to oils is a couple years ago, Canada voted to not drill in the oil fields up in Canada, which is one of the most environmentally protected areas in the world because it's fucking massive. And you can't build anything on it because it's massive fucking oil fields. But yeah. So that's the end then? No closing statements by you two?
Eat your vegetables.
Stay your page pool, people. Seriously.
There you go. We got the dualities of the three of us. Me, talking about oil spills. Eat your vegetables by Alex. And last but foremost, set your page pool, kids. Well, again, thank you guys for joining me as always. I appreciate it. I don't know how many people watch this, but I also don't give a crap. And I hope you enjoyed if you did. And if you didn't, then you're missing out. And again, thanks for coming out. And yeah, I'm just stalling for time at this point because I don't really move my mouse.
Wow, what a lazy person.
And with that, we're ending now.
What is this, Family Guy?